Painting this concrete to look super realistic was easier than you might think. My name is Hero Song, and today I'm going to show you how to do it. I'll be demonstrating on the base of the new commemorative provisionally prepared model today, and we'll start things off by giving the concrete bits a coat of dark gray paint. I didn't glue the halflings to the model yet, which was an intentional choice here to make things easier. This allows us to use a thick brush and be loose with how we apply everything. I definitely recommend painting stuff in stages since you don't have to be too careful. Once we coat everything in dark gray, we want to use an amazing trick that I learned from a Midwinter Minis video, which is to use a tiny piece of torn sponge that we're going to hold in tweezers to apply the next coat of paint, which in this case is a slightly lighter gray. We want to load the sponge from a wet palette if you have one, so that you can have a little bit of water naturally mixed into the paint. You don't want the sponge to be sopping wet, but you also don't want it to be completely dry. If you play with the technique a bit, you can find the right balance. We want to apply this in a dabbing motion to the upper areas of the model. Think a little bit like a dry brush, except a little bit less brushing, if that makes sense. We can use this technique to apply really surprisingly smooth color transitions to models. Overall, it's a really amazing technique and I highly recommend playing around with it. We can then use a normal brush after the sponge step to apply some glazes to the model to make sure to keep the color transitions extremely smooth. The occasional bit of leftover texture on the concrete is okay, since it looks pretty realistic as concrete is a bit bumpy in real life, but overall we want to make sure to keep the color transitions nice and smooth. Now we want to grab our lightest gray color and apply some edge highlights to the model. We want to use some nicely thinned paint for this, and we want to use a brush motion that isn't totally our normal highlighting motion. Normally when we edge highlight, we want to drag the brush in a smooth stroke all the way across the edge. Here, we want to do a little bit more sketching, or moving the brush around a bit as we fill in the lines on the model. This gives a little bit of texture to the highlights, which is absolutely critical in giving the overall weathered appearance. The corners are exactly where scratches and marks would be in real life, so this helps to accentuate the realism of the model. We also want to use this light gray color to paint any exposed interior of the concrete. Now it's time to use an awesome tool that should be added to all painting arsenals: acrylic inks. Inks are basically really high pigment washes that behave more like paints, so they don't seek out the low points on the model. There are a million uses for inks, but what we're going to do here is use a dark brown ink to apply some water streaks to the underside of the bullet holes. I ended up applying the ink a little bit too thickly here, so be sure to add a little bit more water to it before you place it on your model. But no worries for me, because we could clean it up by glazing a little bit of gray color onto them. You can easily do this anytime you need to make a touch up on this model. Once the inks are dry, we can go ahead and use some dark brown wash to sketch in a little bit more water streaks and to define the area that's closer to the ground. I like to imagine that some mud has splashed around here and would have splattered on the concrete over time because it's been out in this battlefield getting nice and weathered, so we want it to be brown at the bottom. And before that's done drying, we also want to apply a black wash all over the whole thing. We want to apply this slightly before the brown is dry because this will allow the colors to mix and give us a little bit more color depth on the model. And if you can believe it, that's it. That's all it takes. We're done. I'm absolutely in love with this model in general, and I'm planning to do a whole video about the overall paint job. But I really thought the concrete turned out amazing and wanted to share a shorter form video about the process of doing this specific section. Definitely check back soon for the full project video, and in the meantime, have a very Merry Christmas or happy anything else that you celebrate. My name is Hero Song, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!